Welcome to the Bowden family plot. I rest here with my loving husband Hugh, of just 7 years, who died suddenly at 37 years of age. We were, however, blessed with 2 children, Katherine, here, and William, who moved to Canada. From the beginning, mine was a privileged life. My father, you see, was William McEchron, well respected and very successful in the local lumber business.
Grandfather McEchron was a devout Methodist, and my mother grew up under strict rules that forbade dancing, playing cards, or drinking of any kind of spirits.
My father was, however, very tender-hearted when it came to the women in his life. His mother, my mother, Sarah Elizabeth McEchron, and his 5 daughters. I was the eldest, born in 1859. We lived on Elm Street, initially. Then Katie was born, but we sadly lost her at just 2 years of age. Caroline's birth brought solace to the family, and we were soon in search of a larger home.
In 1870, Grandfather McEchron bought a lovely home on the corner of Church and Maple Streets. Mother says it had 10 outside doors and one of the very first bathrooms in the village. It had a most charming, long-covered porch with a southern exposure. Mother's family grew up in the most delightful place imaginable.
When we had been in the new house for 5 years, Lizzie was born. Mother, who at 39, did not make a good recovery after Lizzie's birth. So it was then that Father decided the best plan was for me to discontinue my education and to stay home to care for Lizzie. I hated to give up my studies, but I enjoyed raising Lizzie and even got to share a room with her.
Tragedy visited Mother's family again when her dear, outgoing sister Bertha passed away when she was only 21. We have so many lively stories about my Aunt Bertha. Then it struck again. Her sister Caroline died at the tender age of 19.
It was left to Lizzie and I to continue Father's legacy. Perhaps that's why he began to take me on business trips and dinners with clients. It was then that Father began seeking a trustworthy businessman to be able to manage his future Canadian operations. Along came a man with excellent references. His name was Hugh Bowden. Father was sure that he could manage his Canadian operations. So it came to be that Father had a business partner, and I, at 31, had a husband.
When Father died suddenly in 1896, Mother was faced with the challenge of raising 2 children and adjusting to a world that was quick to underestimate the worth of a single woman. Mother, of course, had been a woman of means, with high social position that allowed her many privileges most women could not enjoy.
When my father passed in 1909, Mother and I continued his philanthropic works. Both the Glens Falls Home for Aged Women and the Methodist Church were causes close to our hearts. I also purchased the old family homestead and tore it down to expand the gardens around our 2 lovely properties. Our little block on the corner of Reach and Church Street became a must-see for visitors.
My Aunt Lizzie and her family moved to Grand Mare, Canada, and my brother William followed suit and raised his own family there. Although we enjoyed visiting them in Canada, we never really wanted home to be anywhere other than Maple Street in Glens Falls.
As the women's suffrage movement gained ground in the early part of the 20th century, I was proud to watch how my daughter took her place of leadership in the suffrage activities here in Glens Falls.
Mother, you were as involved in the movement as I was.
No, I believed in the cause and supported you and the others in the Political Equality Club, but it was you who used your voice to involve more women to make real acts of change.
I was inspired by our trip to England when I was only 21. The suffragists there certainly knew how to call attention to the plight of women. I'm glad we haven't had to resort to violence here. Although the authorities did use violence against the suffragists in England as well as here.
It is still possible to believe in what is right and be a law-abiding citizen.
That's what Beatrice Forbes, Robertson Hale, said when she spoke at our home, Mother. Wasn't that a wonderful event?
Oh, it certainly was. It was an open-air meeting in our garden in June of 1914, and over 250 people attended, including influential people like George Peabody Foster of Lake George. But you held many large gatherings in our home, and even led a suffragist parade in Albany.
It is hard to believe women had to fight long and hard, for so long, for the most basic rights in a democracy. We had to convince people we were not trying to be men. We simply felt women should have a say in how society works. Do you remember when the newspapers wrote that they were surprised to find one of our speakers, Lucy Pearson, was decidedly feminine, even though she spoke out for women's suffrage?
Some of the notions that people had about female suffragists were so strange. I feel proud that I lived long enough to cast my vote, and even prouder that I had a daughter that was willing to fight for my right to do so. We hope that all women here today appreciate their right to vote. Thank you for stopping by.